somebody said, do you want us to go back and get Bob's things? And he had a $100 bill, his ring, I think his shirt, I'm not sure. But it took, like that day went forever. It was so odd.
It's such an odd day. I remember coming home from the hospital, and I feel like you're there forever, but I think with Jake, I don't think we were there very long. And I remember walking in that door to my house and just screaming because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I had come home without him.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm Heather Strotter. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to share this week's episode with you. We talk about the loss of Bob Best, and we talk to his wife, Lisa, and both of his kids, Aly and Tyler. And it is a true roundtable discussion. At times, we're all talking at the same time, but it is a wonderful conversation where we share memories, tears, laughter, and we talk about and we learn about the way grief affects us all. I love this conversation because it showcases all the different journeys people are on and how you can experience so many different things all at the same time. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
So today's episode is a very special episode. We are examining in more depth than I think we've had before the idea of how grief and how the loss of people in our lives not only impacts us individually, but how it impacts us as a group. So today I have with me an entire family. They lost their father, they lost their husband, and they lost him completely unexpectedly. Before we get into depth, let me introduce the Best family. I'm here with Lisa, Aly, and Tyler. We're here to talk about Bob. And if each of you could just sort of introduce yourselves to the audience, I would love that.
This is going to be a little bit of laughter, a little bit of sadness, but I am Bob's wife. And you are. You can't talk yet. See, now we're laughing.
Thanks so much for having us, Heather. I'm Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
We're here because Aly sort of invited us to come speak with you. I don't want to say I'm a fan of the grief content, but what you're doing is pretty special.
Thank you. Can one of you share about Bob?
I can start.
Doesn't matter to me.
It was a Monday that Bob passed. Sometimes I say he left because we both left for work and not expecting that we wouldn't see each other again. Bob worked out faithfully with some friends at a gym, and he was in great shape. You know, we had no idea that he had a weak heart. He gave me a kiss goodbye. It was the day after his birthday. And I remember when Dad had to come back in the house because he forgot the stupid gift I gave him, because Bob had everything, but I gave him a gift. It was a money clip.
He was hard to purchase gifts for.
He really was.
Yes.
And I remember him walking back into the kitchen and looking at me with his money holder. With that, he has this grin. That's something that everyone knows about.
Yeah.
Dad, Bob, he's got this great grin. I felt bad because it wasn't a great gift. Anyway, he leaves. I finish my coffee. I go to work. I was a union member working on the SSTA at the middle school. I walked into my office and my former principal came in and she said, Lisa, grab your bag. Bob is on his way to the hospital. Larry Fine called. And I grabbed my lunch bag. I don't know, I just kind of freaked out. We called him back. And the first thing he said was, I'm so sorry. And I was like, why?
For what?
So I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm telling my principal to take a faster route, and she wasn't going fast enough. And I'm thinking at the same time, my brother-in-law had a heart attack, and he is fine. And I'm saying, everyone has heart attacks, and everyone is fine. So I get there. I guess there was like a phone tree, because everyone knew. So they came in and they sat with me, and I'm trying to locate Tyler. The nurse was saying, he's going to be all right. Look at the monitor. The short story is that he wasn't. And what really freaked me out and made me so mad was the doctor came in who was helping Dad. And he said in the present tense, which really pisses me off, does Bob have a good appetite? Does Bob work out? It wasn't did. It was, I'm pretty sure it was the word does. And then he put his head down and he said, I'm so sorry. to tell you, he didn't make it.
So how old were you guys?
It was a week before my 27th birthday because Dad and I are both Tauruses. So I was the last to arrive. And I thought the same thing driving there. She and I, I thought, well, he did just turn 60, and he does love to be active. Very well could have been a heart attack. And I pictured myself joking at his bedside with him,
Being like, come on, Dad.
Yeah. So I got there last, and I walked in. I saw Larry Fine. I had overheard him say, I have to leave. I can't be here. I cannot be here. He didn't want to see me get so upset. And they said, Aly, you really need to be strong right now. And that's sort of when I knew. And then I was brought to the family room, and I saw these guys.
Do any of you, do you have, a relationship with your dad, with Bob, still? Do you talk to him? I talk to Jake all the time. Sometimes, do you talk out loud?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Do you?
Not so much out loud, but someone told me, or maybe I read it somewhere, that if you say the person's name out loud, then that person will come to you. And I know that Bob is here. I just know he's taking really good care of us, and every day, I talk to him out loud, but I think I want to talk to him more out loud.
I wrote him a Father's Day card and brought it to the tree 2
Oh, you
years
did?
ago, and I sat there and read it aloud to his tree.
So we have this great group of friends, and you know many of them. A person outside of our friend group called and said, I don't know if you know that you can do this, but if you'd like, you can plant a tree in Congress Park. And she was helping make the connection. She gave me choices sycamores, they grow fast and they're strong and, fast and strong. And I thought, okay, sycamore will be beautiful. So we planted the sycamore tree, and whoever...
I didn't realize you could do that. It's pretty cool.
Yes, and there are a handful of trees and bushes over there in memory of other people. Mm-hmm. And we decorate it every Christmas.
And we have spent some other Father's Day there. We'll get bear claws from the breadbasket and bring them over and just kind of hang out. And
when the tree started growing, people would send me a picture and say, "Oh my, look how beautiful the tree looks."
How old are your children?
Ruby just turned 5, and Penelope will be 2 at the end of March.
So they did not know.
Nope.
Which is one of my biggest regrets. I did so many things. I saw mediums and sought therapy and did energy work, and I was like, okay, someone please help me figure this out. When Nicole, my daughter-in-law, was pregnant, I was very, very, very sad that Bob wasn't going to meet the baby. But this woman said, you don't understand. Bob will meet the baby before anybody. And I really believe that.
Oh.
I believe that it was God and Bob gave the baby to Tyler.
I feel like having young kids around when you're going through something so hard also makes it, I don't want to say it makes it less hard, because in some ways it's sad, right? I'm sure you're sad that your kids don't know your dad.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to feel hard. I don't know. I think it's oddly beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate enough we live in the house. My wife and 2 daughters and I live in the house that I grew up in. There's still this big green chair that my mom and dad bought 30 years ago or however long ago. I can fit in the chair with both my daughters and, watch TV at night. And it's kind of like one of those full circle moments.
That's really special, I think, to have that. Do you feel him close because you can,
mm-hmm.
You have so many memories, right? You can almost see him everywhere.
So many memories. And Ruby's old enough to know that that's Grandpa Bob's chair. It's special.
This is kind of to everyone, but also a little bit to you because you're in the house and you mentioned his books. Do you have things where you just keep it exactly the same even though time has passed?
I left all of Bob's clothes for a very, very, very long time right in the closet. The jeans that Bob was at, don't wash jeans. I just told Tyler, Dad said, don't wash those jeans. It's interesting that the jeans and the belt were right on the hook, and I can see it right now. Nothing moved for a very long time. And then Tyler and Nick moved into the house, and obviously things had to be moved. And now a lot of stuff is upstairs, right? In the attic?
Yeah, a lot of it's up in the attic. I worked with my dad for 3 years until he passed. I still have this way too big storage locker that we had for work. It has become our family catch-all. So there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, I've moved on from that company. We closed the company, but I still have tools and things like that.
It's funny that you said the clothes, and then it reminded me, and I think I might have even have said this on the show before. In our guest room, I have this very weird furniture that was my parents' first, when they got married 50 some years ago, their furniture of their first apartment or something. And somehow I ended up with it in my guest room. But there's 2 drawers that are Jake's clothes. It didn't feel right to get rid of them because it felt like it's all I got.
I mean, the boot bag didn't move. His ski pants, his boots. He finally bought a brand new helmet and loved it. I think he only used it a couple of times, but the bag didn't move for a while. And we were big skiers. April 27th, Bob and I went to Killington. It was a beautiful day. It was late April. And I had this experience that I wanted to talk about at some point where I felt like I was being prepared for this. And I think I told you guys a couple times. We were at the summit. Dad skied down in front of me. It was towards the end of the day, and I was just watching him ski. He's a great skier. And something said to me, he's not going to be skiing next year. I shuffled, I moved my binding. I moved my skis a little bit, and then I thought, well, maybe he'll break a leg. And so I skied down. I didn't give it much more thought until we did an après thing, and I couldn't find him, and I started getting really nervous. I couldn't find him for 20 minutes. He was at the bar, and I was checking something else out. And when I found him, I said, I feel like I just lost 20 minutes of my life with you. And he said, that's weird to say. So I don't know what he said, but why'd you say that? A couple of other things. The day before, when he was raking in the back, and I asked these guys all the time, did you see anything wrong with Dad? Remember? Was there anything? And he went to the backyard, and he was raking, and it was kind of like a Jack Kerouac moment. And Bob read him. He had this big rake, and he just put his chin on it. And he was it looked like he was deep in thought. And I thought, is he feeling okay? So I went out and I saw him. I felt like something was up. Anyway.
Those are hard feelings to make sense of, I think, of sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you look back on them, and sometimes I always wonder with those if it's how real it is or how much we create after the fact of it all.
Something else I wanted to share. Bob's mom and dad are still alive, and we're very, very close. And they were in Florida when Dad passed, and I had to call them.
And Grandma didn't understand, or there was maybe bad connection, but she said Bobby or Bob, and because she ended up being quite loud over the phone. You could hear her repeat herself, and almost with a question mark at the end of his name every single time.
But amazingly, it took them 3 days. They got in the car. They put the situation in a compartment and didn't think about it until they came. And it was 3 days, so we had to do things that typically aren't done before we had the funeral. And then they arrived, and we met at the funeral home, and it was pretty horrible for them.
Did he have siblings?
Yeah. Katie and Mare, and I'm very close with them also.
Not to say, something good that has come of this, but there was definitely a change in the closeness with my dad's side of the family, for sure. And that's something I will always be so thankful for.
I mean, I keep Bob's license. Somebody said, do you want us to go back and get Bob's things? And he had a $100 bill, his ring, I think his shirt, I'm not sure. But it took, that day went forever. It was so odd.
It's such an odd day. I remember coming home from the hospital, and I, to both of your points, right, it's you feel like you're there forever, but I think with Jake, I don't think we were there very long. I have no idea, but I want to say I think it was an hour. It was not long. There was a prolonged period when they were doing something, but it wasn't changing the course of what had happened. And I remember walking in that door to my house and just screaming because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I had come home without him. That feeling is just...
It's crazy.
What's interesting is that as difficult as it is to be there and going through that, everyone at the hospital, they're there to work. So everyone that, would kind of check in on us would be very busy.
What happened? So he had a heart attack.
He was doing high intent, what do you call it?
HIIT class.
training at
Peak.
Peak. He was pushing a sled when his heart gave out. And then they couldn't resuscitate him or couldn't bring him back there, so the ambulance came. When you called me, I was on my way to drop the dog off at 7:30 when you called me. So you were already at the hospital.
Now, did you tell him, like, on the phone, or did...
We didn't know when you called me, because I was
Weren't
there.
you going to meet Dad for
I was going to
something?
meet him for breakfast before we went to Albany. And they didn't know why he had the heart attack.
And he had it because... So there was a...
Apparently
genetic...
an enlarged heart.
Okay.
Myopathy.
Cardiomyopathy.
Which can be caused from a number of different things.
When I was living in Connecticut in 2012, I want to say, and he went to the hospital with chest tightness, shoveling the driveway. But that we're talking 6 years prior. Past stress tests, was active
In great
constantly.
shape.
Yeah.
Great.
And he was also the youngest in that very small group of friends he worked out with. But what I wanted to add to when he was in the ambulance, so our neighbor at the time, one of the paramedics ended up being her ex-husband. So he was able to talk to me when I, took some space from the family room and was very, very sorry, but did say, we did everything. It was nice to see a familiar face.
When we took him to the hospital, or in the ambulance, the whole thing, when we got in there, it was just me. I remember walking into the hospital, and the emergency room doctor was one of Ethan's, at the time, best friend's dad. In a weird way, all these years later, it's still really comforting because I was like, I know that Todd did everything because there was no way he wanted to tell us that our son died. There's comfort in that for me, that I was like, someone really did give it their all.
Was Ethan with you?
So Ethan called 911.
Yep.
The ambulance and the fire, everybody came in the house because called 911. Everyone came in, and then I called Brian. I remember standing there and being like, and he was like, "Don't say that." He called our next door neighbor, who then came in, and then he called my mom, who then came in. So my mom and the next door neighbor stayed with Ethan, that poor kid, right? 5 years old,
Yeah.
and again, not the silver lining, but sort of the appreciation, because when you wake up and you have these days, right, that are just hideously horrible and unimaginable, frankly, unimaginable. Even all four of us who have lived it, you talk about it, I almost feel like we're standing outside of ourselves sometimes. It's unimaginable. But it makes you recognize that it can change that quickly.
Well, like we said before, perspective. I mean, there's nothing that can't be figured out after having experienced this.
What sometimes trips me up, I sense this, I'm more anxious than I've probably ever been. My mom said that Monday was a beautiful day. If I wake up and it's a gorgeous Monday morning, and I'm just on edge, or sometimes I'm like, life can't be this good. It's just, kind of what we live with now.
You had said in your email, I'm not the same person I was before Bob left, and I will never be that person again.
But, everyone who's experienced sudden loss or loss at all, probably can relate.
I'm so much more irritable sometimes, and just really lacking some patience, not with anyone or any scenario in particular, but I remember a couple years ago, I was on my lunch break from the pharmacy, and I just was waiting in line for my sandwich, and I was just like, I'm internally so angry right now. I guess with that, I've also learned a lot of patience. I do find myself way more angry and irritable at times, but my patience it's huge. I have patience for everything now and any scenario.
I think what you just said, though, is so important, because I think that I, to a fault sometimes, try so hard to find the good. Do you know what I mean? Because I think you need to sometimes. But I think that the really honest part of it is, as good as we try to say, all this, two things can be true and all this stuff, the realness is that it just totally sucks. And it's even after all this time, it's like you're still really angry, and like all of those feelings are there. And I think that's really important that you said that, because sometimes, the whole like living in the moment and don't sweat the small stuff and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's very true and you kind of need it, but it's also like, shut up, right? Like, it's just like, I lost my kid, I lost my father, I lost my husband. Like, these are horrible things and I don't want to sit here and be happy about it. I'm pissed and I'm mad.
It's almost like, not that this has happened, but like I'll use the example of like a flat tire. I mean, if I knew that my dad was like down the road, I wouldn't really give a shit I had a flat tire, but it makes it like you're like, oh my God, now I have a flat tire.
And I think your point, Tyler, about the like the anxiety or like the, so there's like this anger, that rage kind of stuff that kind of still lives below the surface, but then that anxiety, right, of like, it's like we're just forever changed. I just think about that now, right? Like, okay, so you wake up on a Monday and it's a beautiful day, and instead of being like, hey, it's a beautiful day, it's like, oh shit, what might happen? And those are the things that are so hard to share with people who have not been in this space. Sometimes it's just hard.
I went back to work quickly. I just wanted to be busy. Boy, was that a mistake. I taught at the middle school, and one of the secretaries, she had my back. So she got a sub for me who was on call, because everyone knew why. First of all, they're like, why are you coming back? Like, so I would just sort of come and go. I would do 2 classes, and then I would
I'm done here.
Break down. The kids would say, but we just saw Mrs. Best. Yeah, well, she'll be back maybe tomorrow. I was not a good teacher for that the rest of the school year, but my kids and my colleagues understood it. But I didn't want to just be home. I wanted to be busy.
So you worked with your dad?
Yeah.
So what was that like afterwards?
Didn't really know what to do with the grief, basically. I was very angry, very sad. So I kind of just turned inward a little bit and worked as much as possible. I think I heard you say on a previous podcast, too, that you didn't get do talk therapy, anything like that. And, I still know as well. Yeah. I mean, everybody deals with it in their own way. Now you look back, it was just a blur.
And I couldn't wait to get back to work. And so I only took like a week off. Kim had actually said, she was like, are you sure you want to come back? And I said, yes.
Now, how long after Jake passed did you start the foundation?
So right away.
Okay.
So he passed in December, and by March we were already like incorporated.
But grief can be a huge motivator, though, too.
It is. Like, I've talked about this on the show, too. Like, sometimes, and maybe you guys feel this way, too. Like, I would say, like, it's like the elephant in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Like, but, like, when you walk into a space, like, I felt for a long time, I was like, oh, I'm the one whose kid died. Or, like, people know your story, and they know your story even if they don't know you. And then it's like it defines who you are. And then the expectation of who you are is almost preconceived or something.
Right. I mean, I can speak about my grief experiences until I turn blue in the face, but it's the first like minute to 2 minutes where I get like super choked up, and then it becomes a very normal conversation. So it's like, I'm always getting over that little peak, but then it's something I'm very comfortable talking about.
It's nice to talk, like to know that you're not alone, but like our society, our culture does not sort of put value on grief or like feelings. And I think that it's coming a long ways. Like, I feel so much better talking about it.
I would run into people who knew both of my parents in public, and maybe 3 to 5 months after would be able to read them enough where, they would say, well, how's your mom doing? And I was always very honest immediately, almost to like a fault. I was like, she's awful, but their response, whether they said it or not, was like, well, how come? Like, what do you mean? She's still awful.
She's still?
You're right. Like, people have this, like, they think there's, like, a timeline or something, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's like, oh, you've passed your timeline. Now you should move on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm 36. 2 of my best friends in the world, I went to kindergarten with, still live in the area. Everybody moved back to the area. Also lost their dads. One of them 2 months later, the other one 10 years earlier. We don't even talk about it to each other. Not other than like fond memories.
Oh,
but,
yes.
Like, and even when we were living through it, like as far as like, are you good? Yeah. Okay.
Like that's it. Yeah.
Right. So, like, you guys have the foundation, and I don't know if Tyler, you want to talk about it a little bit?
Oh, sure, yeah. 6 years ago, the fall of 2018, Larry Fine, his wife Rhonda, Mike Holland, his wife Christy, and JT, they organized a golf tournament in his memory and to raise money.
At the start, it wasn't through the YMCA.
I think we had 150 people. I mean, it was just has grown and got too big. I mean, they were like, this is great, but this is a ton of work. So we passed it sort of to the YMCA, and we help out a lot, but all the money we raise goes to before and after school programs for families in the community. 2 years ago, I think they're going to do the same thing this year. Families on the backstretch at NYRA for their children to go to the camp too. I mean, the Saratoga YMCA has just been an unbelievable partner.
Like, so all those kids who are going to camp, who wouldn't go to camp, like, that's because of Bob, right? Like, that's great.
There was a scholarship as well.
So it's a $1,000 scholarship for a student in the county who is going into the trades.
Okay.
I can't believe that so much is going on for both of us and our families because of two people, you know. I can't believe that the Y has been able to help us raise as much money as they have, and I can't believe that we're doing it all in Dad's name, and sometimes I can't believe he's not here. You know, it's just, wow. It was only done because he left.
Right? Like, so it's like you're so proud of the work that you've done and what you've done with this loss, right? But at the end of the day, you're like, I always say it, I wish I was just not as nice of a person or as good of a person and just had my kid back, or you had your like husband back or your dad back. You're like, I would trade it all.
I was going to say, so you know how like people view Cardinals as, you know, yes. So for the longest time, it was only Cardinals. I see a lot of, I don't want to say a lot. The last 3 times I've seen a Hawk, it has been when I am really struggling.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, thank you. But this one time, maybe like 2.5 months after my dad passed away, I didn't realize how like bird of prey like cardinals actually are. So I'm driving, I'm taking the kids to the pool, and I just smoke a cardinal because it went right under my tire. I called you and I was like, I just destroyed Dad again.
That's
I was
right.
like, he's never coming. I was like, what have I
you
done?
had a hard time with that.
Oh my God.
I would totally, I would like have lost my mind. Yeah,
I was like, the cardinal.
Smoked a cardinal.
The cardinal, there's no more cardinals. Like, I'll never see another one. And then I like Google searched it, and I was like, okay, they really go after whatever it is that they're trying to eat. Like, I guess it didn't realize a car was coming. It was just like the longest 5-minute traumatic experience ever.
Because it's like you just want to rewind. You're like, I can't.
Like, well, there goes ever seeing him again in any
sorry, Dad.
in any
Yeah,
form.
yeah.
Like,
So one of the things we do we've been trying to do on the show a little bit is provide the audience with, I sometimes call them like takeaways. Like, every situation is different and unique, but like, are there any things that people have said that just you wish they didn't say, or lessons you've learned that are just that people listening can think about the next time they are with someone who's had a loss or they're in that space? Like, I always think it's really helpful if we can just sort of provide our audience with just things to ponder, things to think about.
Some things that people said, you know, in time, you know, the time was supposed to heal, you know, the loss of Bob. That didn't work. You're doing really well, and I'm not doing well at all. But, you know, people wanted to make me feel good. So I would suggest don't tell anyone who's had a loss that they're doing well. And I did a lot of reading that was extremely helpful. I think it's important that people feel comfortable in any space to just talk about their loved one. And I know I have those spaces. So if people can provide their good friend who is grieving the space to talk, you know, and just be good listeners. I've had a lot of that.
A lot of what she said after losing someone, but before losing someone, gee, I wish, you know, my dad knew exactly how I felt about him, but I wish I told him more. I try not to let people in my life that I care about, you know, if I were to go tomorrow, I want everyone to know, you know, how I feel about them. So and let things go, basically. Yeah.
I wish I told Bob much more how much I appreciated him.
Those are good takeaways. Those are good lessons. I always feel weird when I say this again, but I've loved this conversation. Like, I really have. For me, having these conversations, it just helps, right? Like,
Absolutely.
So I'm so grateful for you all coming in, because I do think that sharing your grief with others, I think, is just, I don't know, it helps, I think. And it doesn't make it easier, it doesn't make it go away, but it sort of just helps. And like sharing the stories and sharing the tears and sharing the laughing through the tears kind of thing, like I always, it makes me feel better. And it makes me always feel like Jake's got another person up there, right? Like, so, like, they didn't know each other, but like,
Exactly.
now they're connected.
That's a really cool way to think about it.
Bob will probably go find Jake and say, hey, your mom's really cool.
See, I love that.
And Jake will say, and so are your family members. This was a great experience. I have been thinking about it the last couple of days, wondering, how will I get through it? And I think we all did a pretty good job, but I appreciate that you brought us together, and thank you for reaching out to Heather also, honey.
Yeah.
Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Thank you so much for watching.